Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. I'm so glad you're here and I hope you're doing really well. A few months ago, earlier this year, TT Artisan sent me their 27mm f2.8 autofocus pancake lens, and I made a video about that. I'll leave a link to that down below as well as up here, so you can watch that if you haven't already. So I share my thoughts on that lens there. Once I had used this lens, it got me thinking again about, okay, how's the Fujifilm XF 27mm as a street photography lens? And so if you know anything about Fujifilm supply chain woes or distribution woes, you know that lens is pretty hard to find. In fact, it's next to impossible to find. If you go online looking for it almost anywhere, it's out of stock, back order, pre-order, leave a deposit. You just can't find this lens anywhere. So since I have access to a Fujifilm rep, I asked, can I borrow one for a few days? And he said yes. So thanks very much to Fujifilm for loaning me this lens for a few days to give a try. So I'll share a few thoughts about the lens up front here. I don't have it to show you because I had to return it, but I'll share a few brief thoughts on that, and then I'll narrate some of the photos I made with that lens. So first, overall, it's a great lens. I mean, the image quality is awesome. It's I think slightly better image quality, sharpness, contrast, just a little better than the TT Artisan version. Less vignetting in my brief use of it and what I noticed. And it's a great lens. A couple thoughts on it though is the autofocus is using an older autofocus motor system to keep the size small, and maybe that's also why they're using it, to keep the size so very small. So it's louder, it's a little more, it hunts a little bit, so it's not just smooth, gets into autofocus, there's a little chatter almost in it. But it is fast and it's accurate, so that's nice. I did notice it's noisier, louder also. I made a brief video clip with it for trying something else, and the onboard microphones on the camera picked it up really noticeably. So not a lens to use for video with onboard camera mics at least. So just something to be aware of. But it's a great lens. I think it's an awesome lens to have if you have opportunity to have one. I'd be curious if you do have one, your thoughts on it, your experiences of using that. Again, invite you to participate in the comments below. If you have any questions about the lens, I'm glad to answer that. Also, please leave that in the comments below. All right, so enough about the lens for now. Let's look at some photos. So I'll share some thoughts of my photos I made in downtown Bellevue on some street photography. So one of the things I think I'm going to do in this, when I'm narrating photos like this, is I'll always show you the first photo. And the first photos often warm up, get into seeing with the camera because it's different than seeing with your eyes. Also, it's usually, if I'm using a different focal length, how does the lens see? So that's what I did here, just a simple photo looking up at a building with the blue sky day, so kind of nice and simple. As I'm walking around on the day I was out with the lens, there weren't a lot of people, but the light was kind of interesting. It was shifting from clouds to cloudy, to open sky, to dappled light. So it was doing some interesting thing, bouncing off the buildings. So I made a sequence of photos of some reflections in windows, different layers that I was seeing and observing. Of all you're gonna see 3 photos in this sequence. I like this one the best. But I wanted to show you the sequence to show you the thought process and what I'm working on. So this photo I underexposed a little bit, and then once I was in Lightroom, also increased contrast. I worked to darken the blacks, darken the shadows, increase the highlights a little bit as well. So this photo is all about the contrast here. Plus you get the little bit of the hidden feature, if you will, a little hidden treasure of the yellow fire hydrant reflection in the middle. The lines kind of lead you there. So I really like how this photo turned out. As I was making it, I saw mostly the contrast, and I don't even think I saw the fire hydrant, but when I was editing, that was a nice surprise. So that happens sometimes in photos. This one, just a restaurant before it opens with some cool, I think, shadows and reflections. Again, lots of layers here as you look into the building. I like this photo. It's not, I don't think, the strongest of the 3, but again, I wanted to show you the sketch, the process, the thinking as I'm out making photos. I noticed this reflection of sun on the window here at the Hyatt building. I wanted to see if I can get a sunstar, how's sunstar performance with this lens. And it's a pretty well-defined sunstar, but it's pretty subtle, at least in this reflection. So that's why I made this photo. Notice this gentleman walking down the street with his cart of tools and the bag on his back. He's got a lot going on here. He's very kind of wonder where he's headed, what he's working on. But a neat moment happened here is the traffic on this very busy street. This is Northeast 8th. It paused for a minute. I was in between a few cars, got this photo. I like how he's alone on the street here. There's no cars. It's kind of, I think, an interesting story of individuality, a person going about their day, doing their work in the midst of a crowded, busy city. But there's sometimes moments of solitude, aloneness. So that's I enjoy photographing those moments. I wanted to check out how this lens, the 27mm, performs up close, details and things like that. I'm really pleased with this photo. It doesn't have a super close minimum focusing distance and lots of magnification, which is stuff I really, really like. But I really like the detail in this photo. There's lots of texture, lots of grittiness here in this scene that I really like. I think it captured it really well. Also like the fall off to out of focus in the background there. Next sequence is a few photos of, I noticed this gentleman at the end here who was on I think a smoke break from work in between a couple office buildings. And one of the things I try and remember to do is when I see a photo, make a photo. You don't know if it's gonna last, especially if there's people involved. You don't know if they're gonna stay, if they're gonna move, what's happening. So I wanted to make this photo to get started, and then I'm gonna make a few more as I move and get closer to him to see if I can get an even hopefully more interesting photo. So here's the next one, and then I tried framing him with some grass and this bit of a tree here. And then finally I got to where I just have the crosswalk in the photo and him. So I'm really glad I worked this and was patient with it. And I like, again, this sometimes life works in your favor. He's literally standing aligned with one of the lines here. So it's just, here, look at this guy. You can't not look because he's in the middle and he's on a line. And then another nice little gift in this photo was the reflection above him from one of the building's windows, creating almost like a cloudy pattern. And then the little bit of slice of clouds right above. I really like how this photo came together and all the elements that lined up nicely to make it work, I hope. Free smells in the Jimmy John's neon sign. This photo is all about that just little detail. So I underexposed in camera, then I also underexposed and increased contrast even more in Lightroom, brought out a little bit of the reds in Lightroom to make that the star of the show, which is what it is in this photo. So seeing things, understanding how composition works, how exposure works to tell the story you want in the photo, in camera and with software, it's just another tool in the toolbox of creating the stories you want to tell in your photos. I do enjoy simple photos of window reflections with clouds, and here's one of those. This building has been under renovation for about the past 6-8 months, so I haven't been able to get close to it for a while. It's just recently opened their ground floor renovation. So in that renovation, they added a new fountain out front, they used to have a fountain, but this is a different one. And this leaf was nicely arranged in front of it. So I got down low, and then I had to get back up again. But just a nice, I hope, simple composition that works well, I hope, from the perspective of changing the viewpoint of the camera from normal standing height to down low to the leaf's eye view of the world. Did another photo of the fountain, trying a long exposure. I like how this turned out. This fountain has some lights in it. I think I've mentioned this before in a photo of this fountain. Want to come back at night to see what this looks like all lit up when it's dark. I photographed this building. This is the same building in the previous two photos before. And I like trying different focal lengths, seeing how it looks with compositions I'm used to looking at differently. And I really like how this one turned out. This photo I've made a bunch of times. Again, it's fun experimenting with different focal lengths to see how each one sees the same scene a little differently. A couple folks were up above working on window washing, and they laid these signs out down below. I liked how they kind of staggered the cones so you could get this neat little photo, hopefully, of seeing one up close and then the rest in the background without them hiding each other by being lined up perfectly. A nice, another happy accident of someone else helping me create a photo. Then you just have to notice it and make the photo. This one I'm showing because I wish I had done something differently technically with this photo. And that is, I wish I had photographed it at f11, f16, so I could have that foreground sculptural element, which is very organic, in focus, as well as having the clouds, which kind of mimic the shape of that sculpture. But the foreground's a little out of focus, and I wasn't quite paying attention. So this is a reminder to myself to slow down a little bit and be intentional about settings and composition and what you're trying to say in a photo. So I like it, but I know what I wish I had done differently. So lesson learned, hopefully, for next time. I'm showing you this photo so I can show you the next sequence of photos. So I photographed this building quite a few times as it's been under construction. It's getting taller every time. This lens isn't the best to photograph from the vantage point you can, just because it's kind of in the middle, in that it's not wide enough and it's not close enough, so it works. But here's what's cool about it. After I made this photo and I was checking it on the back of the camera, I saw this neat little scene on these bricks right in front of me where I was standing. The light on the windows from that building was reflecting and making this neat little spotlight on the brick pattern here. And so I thought, I'll wait for some people to walk, or in this case, ride by, and see if I can make a few photos of the batch. This is my favorite of that. I went with a little longer exposure, longer shutter speed to get some blur in the motion, to add hopefully a little bit of more interest to the photo. So I really like that little spotlight. And again, it's a neat little scene. It was an accident. I wasn't intending to look for this. I just happened to look down and notice it as I had my camera in playback, and then I switched back to regular and I saw, oh, that's a neat composition, and away we go. So sometimes the photographic universe provides photos when you least expect it. I then went to the garden and wanted to try the lens with the last of the autumn flowers that are still blooming at the garden. So I wanted to play with, just see again how colors look with this, which, no surprise, they look really nice. I'm not used to photographing the garden at this focal length. Usually when I'm there, I try and go for simpler compositions. So this was a bit of a challenge for me, but I love the colors. The lens is just amazing for detail and sharpness and contrast and all that good stuff. It looks great. And then I went over to the dahlia area of the gardens where those are still blooming. And I made this photo, and then I said, I have the 16-80 with me, let me get it out. So I made a couple photos with the 16-80 in the way I love to photograph the garden, which is, emphasizing a single flower, blurry background, simple compositions. I like the little raindrop falling off the flower here. And then this single blossom is getting ready to grow, and I really liked how the layers lined up here. I liked how it worked to get just a simple composition in this vertical mode here, and I played with this for a few minutes, and I like this photo best from the bunch. So that's some thoughts on making photos with the Fujifilm XF 27mm f2.8 RWR lens for street photography. If you can get one, I highly recommend it. It's a great lens. I really, really liked the opportunity to photograph with it, with the caveats I mentioned earlier in the video. However, having said that, it's hard to find, as I mentioned also earlier. So if you're looking for a small light lens to use on a small light camera, or if you want to be discreet, I reminded again of this TT Artisan autofocus 27mm lens f2.8, which is about $150 US. So it's a great value. These are available last time I checked, which was just this morning. So if you're looking for a pancake lens, that TT Artisan is one to consider. And again, I left the link down below to a video I did about that lens earlier. So Anyway, that's enough of that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, thoughts, suggestions, or questions you want to share, I really appreciate having conversation with you. Also, it is a help when you make a comment. The algorithm likes when people comment on video, so that's a big help to me. So if you got a few minutes and can leave a note, that would be greatly appreciated. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. So until we meet again, I hope you stay safe, stay well, and have fun creating photos. Bye for now.